What up, y'all? So, got more stuff on everybody's favorite subject. No, literally, fucking talking about pessimism, I think, has made me kind of a pariah now. Like, no one wants to talk to me because it just bum them out, but this brings validity to the whole point of pessimistic people, cynics, if you will, being the most oppressed class. Not oppressed in the sense that they're enslaved or anything, but that, no one wanted fuck all to do with them because they're like, oh, you're bumming me out. And it's like, I'm just trying to get you to consider something. But, yeah, I mean, this isn't just gonna be a series of subjects that's, depressing. This actually I found quite interesting. And this is, again, from Ligotti's tremendous book, Conspiracy Against the Human Race. I really, oh my god, this book, it resonates with me on such a deep level. I really don't think most people would be able to make it very far because it is dark, but it is written with academic prowess, and then the poetic but overtly vulgar and unflinchingly scrutinizing sort of style and attitude that Ligotti holds, and that he expresses very, very well without coming off as arrogant whatsoever. Yeah, in the chapter Who Goes There, which, just to add another piece of kindling to the fire that is, the claims of Ligotti being not Ligotti being a plagiarist, the other way around. Nic Pizzolato, the guy who wrote True Detective, plagiarizing Ligotti for the pessimistic philosophy that Matthew McConaughey's character Russ Cole in True Detective talks about. I mean, I still loved that first season, but the third season was alright. I like Colin Farrell in the second season. That was about the only good thing about it, in my opinion. And I'm not someone who dislikes Nic Pizzolato. I mean, his other stories like Galveston I thought was just forgettable. His story From Here to the Yellow Sea, which is a short story, I believe is published by The Atlantic. I read it online for free. The Atlantic's good like that. They're a good publication for finding short stories. Like, I read David Foster Wallace's A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again, which is, take a depressed genius and put him on a cruise ship. And he writes an article about it. Very long, sprawling article, and it's actually quite good. I found it was one of my favorite things that he's done. He he was barred from going on the brig of the ship by the captain because, out of curiosity, he wanted some of the leftover meat to throw into the water as chum to see if sharks would circle, and the captain, I guess, thought he was like a psychopath or something, so they're like, no, don't let him fucking start fucking with sharks, he might push you over or whatever. He doesn't say that, but he does say that he was banned for the brig, and the captain looked at him with kind of a raised eyebrow after that. But I mean, I digress. Point is, Atlantic's a good publication, and another story they published was Ghost Birds by Nic Pizzolato, and I really like Ghost Birds. Like the character in it, he's very morally ambiguous because he's sleeping with this woman who's like half his age. But it's a really neat story. Like, it's the whole premise is that he is like a forest ranger, and he embraces this kind of Buddhist philosophy on things Zen philosophy, if you will, and he sort of creates this myth of a cryptid, because he goes base jumping illegally off of this sort of like 2,000-foot perch in the park that he guards at night under the cover of darkness, and because of the glow of his night vision goggles and his parachute, his white parachute, people think there's this sort of Thunderbird-like figure in the area. And that's how he meets the girl, because she's a college student who went out with her friends to go find this ghost bird and write a paper on it. I mean, it's a very, very short story. It took me about 20 minutes to read, but I thought it was really good. But yeah, Nic Pizzolato's other stuff has kind of fallen flat for me, except for, again, True Detective Season 1. Season 3 was good in the characters, but it was like just very anticlimactic. Like, it built up a lot that just kind of fizzled out with a very, what I thought was sort of invalidating ending, but it had some great moments. But anyways, I mean, that's how I found out about Ligotti. I was a big fan of True Detective Season 1, especially Matthew McConaughey's character and his philosophy that he expresses. That was my first exposure to pessimism. Having read Conspiracy Against the Human Race and rereading it again, there are lines lifted directly from the book spoken by his character. Like, this chapter that I'm going to talk about, Who Goes There? There's an episode, one of the most sort of pivotal episodes, I believe it's the 4th episode in the first season. It's called Who Goes There? Need I say more? Anyway, in this chapter, Who Goes There, they talk about, or Ligotti talks about, well, I could say they because he cites numerous people, mostly psychoanalysts, and then of course Peter Wafflezapfa, which, if you've been watching my previous videos, I talk about quite a bit because he cites him more than anyone else, because Zapfa wrote this very antinatalist, pessimistic essay that is really quite good called The Last Messiah. Yeah, Ligotti talks about sort of what purpose supernatural cosmic horror serves, how it's kind of construed improperly by most people, and sort of, to most people, they get the inverse effect that they should be getting. And he also explains uncanniness, which I think is very interesting, because I've always found stuff like the uncanny valley, which, for those of you who don't know, it's a phenomenon where, you know, people see like a clown or a mannequin as something that's like anthropomorphic, but there's something off about their form, and that makes people just like very uneasy, uncanny. You know, they find what they're seeing uncanny, and it creates this like uneasiness almost in your gut, and people don't know why. And I have watched so many videos of like academics even trying to explain it, like, oh, it's an evolutionary mechanism to make us realize when there's something posing as a human when it's really not. But I mean, I was always like, most of these inferences, these hypotheses, they just fell flat for me. They didn't seem like good answers, and I think Ligotti, he really, really does a good job of sort of clearing it up. Yeah, I jotted a lot of this down. In my typical style of taking notes, I kind of went backwards and backwards and backwards, because I'm the kind of writer who will just who will write something down and then I'll be like, oh crap, I don't have any more pages, you know, to go through. sort of in a consecutive, what's the term I'm looking for? I mean, consecutive is a term that works, but all sorts to see in a manner that goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sort of thing. So yeah, I did the reverse of that, but yeah. So he talks about cosmic horror and supernatural horror, which comprises a great deal of it. He particularly talks about Invasion of the Body Snatchers and John Carpenter's The Thing as examples of uncanny, and he doesn't say uncanny valley, but I think that's what he is referring to a great deal, or to the fair extent. But chronological is the word I'm looking for. I don't write in a chronological form. I just jot things down as they come to me and use whatever space I can. So yeah, bear with me here. I might have to shuffle around a bit to get this cohesive and digestible. So anyways, what makes something uncanny? In a story, this foundation is framed with a solid mechanistic world that and is innately reflective of our own. Look at Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I personally, my favorite one is the remake in the 70s with Donald Sutherland. I think the other ones are kind of forgettable. It's a world that clearly parallels our own. And The Thing, yeah, they're out in the middle of nowhere, isolated in Antarctica, but still, it is a world that abides by the laws of our own. But like cosmic horror, there is a spacecraft and a thing that it acts in a very mysterious manner, and they have to kind of through trial and error find out what the fuck's going on and who is the thing and who's not. Because for those of you who don't know, and if you don't know, watch the movie because it's fucking great. It's one of the best horror movies ever made, in my opinion. It's a personal favorite of mine. Timeless. Like it's a movie I'll watch again and again and again until the day I perish. Yeah, like it essentially what it does is it kills someone and it amalgamates them, like it absorbs their essence, changes them on a cellular basis, and then they become a proxy for the thing. They're a surrogate to basically perpetuate its very, very hidden motives, and its motives is kind of revealed towards the end, or it's implied anyways. I won't get into what it is because I don't want to spoil the movie for those of you who haven't seen it, but yeah, so these uncanny supernatural stories, they take place in worlds that parallel our own. Yeah, so there's typically some sort of anomalous intrusion, something that threatens the reliability of not only the rules in which the in-world characters rely on to assign meaning to their lives, their loved ones, and laws that dictate their surroundings, but is something that threatens to replace the pernicious ends they, aka we, as a human species require to sustain their own sanity and likeness, just physical survival, with an altogether different but not wholly dissimilar form of parasitic drive, like the body snatchers or the thing. They may be aliens who are foreign to us, but they, like us, need to satiate themselves on basically the existence of other living beings. And it's the enigmatic nature of these lecherous somethings, or even just the character's unwillingness, as opposed to their inability to consider the true nature of whatever is behind the meaning. So, you know, they're denying the truth of what's you know, draining the worldview they relied on, and that's shattering their persona. You know, these are the forces behind these anomalous figures that I think really reflect us, but people don't get that when they watch these things. And I think that, you know, I choose to watch these things because I know there's messages within. No one writes stories like that without there being allegory, at least in my opinion. It's not just a fucking horror movie. I mean, the remake of the thing, or the prequel or whatever, that's just a fucking empty horror movie with that adds nothing new and nothing profound anyways. But in my opinion, I thought it was just cack, absolute garbage. The remake, remake, prequel, fucking whatever. So for the characters, these things I just mentioned, you know, the draining of meaning that comes from the reliability of their world, shattering of their persona by this entity, you know, it especially is acknowledged when it parallels the horrors of our own beings, like I was saying. And sorry, gotta go backwards. So the uncanniness arises from the revelation that our doubt towards the animated objective nature of something is shattered by the inexpressible implications of what afflicts the tangible view of self and the environment we have come to rely on as being unmoving in its solidity, and thus it's apparently quantifiable and a predictable reality. So that's the essence of cosmic horror. It's shattering, it's deviating these laws, it's crushing these laws, and tormenting individuals for reasons that are you know, underlying, or you have to read between the lines to get it. And so it's you know, hence these notions, it's such, you know, real world uncanniness, such as you know, physical deformations that we see in, you know, various medical conditions, you know, be it hereditary or someone who's like a burn victim or something. There's something about that makes us uneasy. You know, it would be, I think, too simple to say that it's just that they are a personification of something that could happen to us. So we just like very implicitly, without articulating it to ourselves, are scared of the prospect of experiencing something like whatever happened to make this person that way. It's also you know, the paranormal, and you know, the terror-inducing quality present within the word paranormal itself. You know, paranormal phenomenon that makes us so uneasy, as you know, they say, like, you know, Wendigo, skinwalkers, the rake, stuff like that. You know, these are, you know, very popular stories because of the uncanny valley, because they resemble us. You know, vampires, zombies. All of these things are things that creatures that fit within something that has, if done properly, the ability to induce that very distinct uncanny valley brand of fear within us. And so, yeah, that makes us very uneasy, strikes into our minds the hideousness of being forced to relinquish our perceived to be reliable grasp on the worldview we have bred into being as a means of insulating and consoling ourselves within walls of ignorance from the great abundance of what, you know, we can explain by today's metrics or replicate, you know, through science or other means. This can quickly, you know, compromise also the whole Maslow's hierarchy-esque sort of sense of sanctuary that comes with living in, a world we regard as stable. You know, roof over our head, meals, and structure that keeps those things happening for us. That stability permits sanity, growth of confidence, and, you know, unfortunately, I think seeds delusion. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a roof over our head or food, but when we have nothing to worry about other than, you know, being a little scared by a horror movie, it allows us to seed ideas that just support what we want to believe, you know. And so, you know, within these contrivances that we so want to believe, developed by, you know, this drive we have to feel that we're always right about whatever, this drive to survive with a sound mind in a world we have concluded to serve our own ideal version of life itself and other such things, which strikes me as inherently selfish, ignorant, and arrogant. Now, experiencing the uncanny violates our apparent authority over what we have chosen to regard as right, as and supposed to have behaved in accordance to our shared belief systems, so our consensus gentium, you know, our what the public would, for the most part, share as a mutual belief. And so, you know, the uncanny, it offends and questions this authority we have assigned through, you know, the constitutions we hold on to, these belief systems, and it really makes the validity of them seem like it's on, like they've been set on much more shaky grounds. I think that's why pessimism is such a daunting set of ideas to most people. And to embrace the fallibility in our judgments, which doesn't seem like a bad thing, is as if the certainty we have spent years just crafting is no longer reliable, it's no longer authentic. And I think that's what makes uncanny sensations as a result of, you know, say the uncanny valley supernatural horror when done right, so scary, is that it threatens our authority over, you know, what we regard as truth, even though our truth may be the farthest thing from what that word seems to imply. Now, to admit our wrongness when faced by the uncanny is so adverse to our own well-being that we have taken great measures to ensure that we employ any means necessary to stave off from the mere acknowledgement of something that imposes on our sense of agency just what is considered natural and adversarially calls into question our own safety slash the concrete nature of our deductive abilities. So, you know, in layman's terms, it makes what we think is our perceptive ability that is accurate something that is a lot less reliable than we have spent years conditioning ourselves or being conditioned to regard as something that is concrete, and that doesn't have to be fluid, doesn't have to be moving, because we've been able to come back to it again and again and again. And so, you know, I don't know about you, but I find that fascinating. I find that a fascinating notion that something as simple as a humanoid form that is just slightly skewed from the form of, you know, just people we may pass on the street, see on a day-to-day basis, is enough to shake us to the core of our very convictions. Now, it's as if high strangeness is a light that, like, you know, sun to a vampire, burns away the solace of what we like to consider as reassuring truth. And the cohesion of our health, mental, physical, otherwise, particularly mental, you know, are what we regard as our sanity. And, you know, as I've said before, you know, if you express ideas like this to a psychiatrist, you are going to be labeled as a depressed individual who requires medication and constant treatment, potentially even institutionalization, which is, you know, regardless of whether you have a neurochemical deficit or not, because, you know, you don't have to be depressed to be a pessimist. You know, there definitely are a lot more people who are depressed within pessimism and nihilism than I'd say any other form of philosophy, at least people who genuinely believe these things and aren't just faking it till they make it, like with optimism. You know, I think that's a horrendous crime. That's I think it's like a thought crime in the truest form. That just, you know, the notion you entertain such ideas and, you know, chosen to be honest about them and divulge them to a physician is enough to get you locked up and considered insane. That's just, you know, it makes me upset on a visceral level. Anyways, now, yeah, so calls in question the cohesion of our mental health, even if all it does is reveal the nature of the very mechanisms from the cognitive to the physiological, in such a way that a revelation drains us of value. Just a simple revelation that, hey, maybe the thing in the movie, The Thing, is a lot more like me, you, and the rest of humanity than most people who've seen the movie care to even acknowledge. Like, you know, that's pretty, I think, profound that something like that can have such an effect on those who are inclined to acutely not look for these things in a way that's like seeking to prove bias, but looking for them just where they may be present. And you know, I never actually thought about this, despite The Thing being one of my favorite movies of all time, until reading it. But I like honestly couldn't agree more. Also, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the Donald Sutherland one. Also a favorite horror movie of mine. Nowhere near as much as The Thing. But a timeless classic, and also something that I would say is probably nihilistic horror. And cosmic horror too. But, you know, the two are often part and parcel. And so yeah, despite these factors, such uncanny happenings that unravel, say, a routine we have prided ourselves on, as we can rely on it time and time again for the same results, yet we still bitch and moan non-stop, because they, as far as we are concerned, will still be there whenever, you know, whatever the insults and sniveling we express in contemptuous sentiments about the routine we've established for ourselves will have us begging for such a routine faster than you can say bad day if what we choose to regularly deny were to be snatched away. And it's an unacknowledged comfort just pulled out from under us by a force that makes us gaze into a void comprised of shadows bearing tough truths about how what is regarded as normal and healthy are anything but. So instead of recognizing it, we retreat into the defense mechanisms that truly drive us in favor of experiencing occasional yet fleeting bouts of uneasiness. And when pressed on what/why it is why we feel this ineffable sense of dread and anxiety when exposed to the uncanny, and we feel it wash over us. And I don't know about you, but you know, I've experienced the uncanny valley when looking at like an old mannequin or something like that. I've experienced that, like this threat that I was never able to put words to. And you know, human beings will go to great lengths to think there's an explanation for everything, when, hey, maybe there's not. Maybe we don't know everything. I think pretending we know everything is more harmful than saying we know nothing at all. Hence why I like to always say that regardless of ideas like this, I really do know nothing at the end of the day. These are just the ideas that I find are the closest to truth, personally speaking. And that's another thing. When I say something, even though I may express it as like this is what's really going on, I'm only speaking from my own experiences, and I'm subject to, you know, bias, and I'm subject to flaws just like anyone else. So, you know, like Ligotti says in the book at the end, this is all my opinion, even though he cites like fucking like dozens of different psychoanalysts and philosophers. Carry on, because I've got some ground to cover here. So instead of recognizing it, we retreat into, you know, the defense mechanisms that truly motivate us to deny these realities in favor of experiencing occasional yet fleeting bouts of uneasiness, and when pressed on why it is we feel this ineffable sense of dread, anxiety, when the uncanny washes over us, we just briefly, on a surface level, or both, consider the uncanniness we feel and move on, just saying, oh, hey, that creeped me out, you know? End of analysis. We move on to whatever may stifle or, you know, urge us to act and attempt to understand why we feel this way. So, you know, we may get inklings of what these horrors are indicating, and then go out and drink ourselves into a blackout so we forget the mirroring effect that is all too present in these things. Like, you know, if you've watched any of the George Romero films up until Land of the Dead, it gets pretty bad after that. You know, he's obviously saying these zombies are essentially supposed to say something about ourselves. And, you know, he also has this running theme in his sort of, in his you know, day of, dawn of, night of, and then the very mediocre land of, that, you know, this theme that the humans are the ones you should be fearing, that the characters should be fearing, because they're the ones who typically end up doing more damage than the zombies. Like, the zombies are just, they're just acting on an instinctual drive. But hey, so are the humans who are trying to survive by any means necessary. And after, you know, say like Dawn of the Dead with the bikers, you know, who are, I think, like, because I just rewatched the movie after years of not seeing it, you know, the full cut, you know, it's indicated the bikers are like either reservists or they were in the military, and they just want to survive, but then they get into the mall and they're just, you know, they're fucking throwing pies in the faces of zombies and stuff. They're just, they've fallen into the gratuity that was what, you know, drove the zombies to come to the mall in the first place, because, you know, that gratuity had such a profound impact on their lives. But yeah, moving on. So our internal metrics and yeah, so our internal metrics, you know, the ways we use to make what we think are reasonable deductions about the world, because we think, oh, this method I use to figure something out is something that I can replicate again and again and again with similar results when I implement it. These metrics may be wrong, since they are based on the fabricated notion of consciousness being in itself, you know, just something that is within a body of laws that are already questionable, you know, laws of nature and so forth, that laws of physics that, you know, are changing. Like, they're like, we no longer really consider relativity the end all be all when it comes to physics, you know, like quantum physics, even though it's, you know, we can't prove anything other than that quantum entanglement is most likely something that happens. It's being regarded more and more as something that supersedes relativity. And I mean, Einstein called quantum physics spooky matter for a reason, spooky matter at a distance, because it defied his prodigious understanding of the universe. And if something can defy Einstein's prodigious understanding of the universe, there's a lot that can defy our own. And so yeah, you know, this what arises from, you know, this sense of variability as opposed to you know, concrete things that we can calculate again and again from person to person in such a light that, you know, the fallibility, which, you know, precludes this perceived accuracy of our coping mechanisms we rely on, you know, to assure our sense of knowing truths. It poses a very disheartening proposition, and that is the principles we have spent our lives defining, refining, ascribing form to, as possibly being wrong. And not just that, but in such a way that we consequentially become hypocrites. And if there is any nonviolent crime that isn't punishable by law in today's day and age, the so-called information age, which in itself is a clear example of such fallacies, since said information seems to serve more uninformed platters, it seems to serve more to uninformed people, with platters of misinformation, disinformation, that's just sometimes perverse in its motivation, and information that serves to entertain us to a point of self-destructing distraction from what's going on around us, and this pointless, decadent engorging ourselves on intangible media. There's no crime greater amongst the internet specifically, but just life in general as an extension, since so much of life in general now revolves around the internet, than being a hypocrite. And that's very unfortunate, because everyone at some point or another has been a hypocrite. I would say everyone has been a hypocrite like countless times. I sure have. And it's admitting this hypocrisy that allows me to feel like I'm growing and my ideas are maturing. And I think that, yeah, even if by accepting that, we are individuals who are primed in an apt way to unlearn the bullshit we have proudly touted for so long, to make room for new and improved personas and lessons about ourselves and our sphere of existence. This attests the imperative nature of the values we assign to ourselves, because to do so typically will thrust us into what we, or what Eckhart Tolle calls the dark night of the soul. And I've been there, because I've done psychedelics that have completely uprooted what I thought were, the most, empirically driven and assured beliefs and values within my ideology. But by doing so, despite the discontent that I may feel for a little while, there is actually a sense of liberation and building anew, but still being aware of what I once thought was true, what I once used to rationalize, to excuse, to explain away this or that. For example, being a heroin addict in the past, all I had to do was convince myself I had a headache to be like, okay, I need to go use heroin. And it's it's an extreme example, but I think it is symptomatic of the cognitive dissonance that we all sort of feel and that we employ, I think, with more knowing than we are willing to admit. And so, these values we assign to ourselves are a means of investing, our abilities to think, change, and reason into one great unmoving monolith of tenets, like the big block with the 10 Commandments on it or whatever, about the mechanisms comprising us and others and everything else under and behind the sun. We take so much solace and reassurance in the solidity of our beliefs. Now I'm going to get into the supernatural fiction a little bit more, and what he has to say about it, Ligotti. I mean, these are all my words, but these are my notes on the ideas he expresses. He also cites a couple other people in the process, like a couple horror writers, a couple psychoanalysts, Zappa multiple times, of course. But via supernatural fiction, we can find reprieve in a roundabout way from our own uncanny fears by viewing and ingesting the nihilistic horror, where all the characters suffer a fate not unlike our own, as we can write it off as just a work of fiction, another work of fiction, just something that's a fabrication which has no relevance to reality, and that describes something, whatever antagonistic force may be portrayed within the fiction as something that's corrupting and plaguing the in-fiction world, and the laws that are regarded as the pillars of its reoccurring structure, that as something too enigmatic and beyond the sphere of our own world to pose any real threat, any real deadly, fatal, unmasking imposition on who we and everyone else are. We are members of a species toiling to survive, reproduce, without having to face our lives being uprooted by such absurd supernatural entities, phenomenons. Look at what are alleged, anyways, to be real-world UFO abduction cases. I would say if you're going to do that, look at John Mack and Jacques Vallée, as they at least are academics who take an academic approach to these things. A lot of these individuals were completely normal people, and once they had these experiences, the validity of the experiences, I'm not too sure of. Could be sleep paralysis, could be trauma, could be just ideas that are seeded through regressive hypnosis, which is known to make individuals suggestible, to spinning a narrative. These individuals change so completely that they usually end up devoting their lives to trying to understand what's going on, and may lose all professionalism as a result, and will be written off as complete quacks. Which is why I like John Mack, because he said, wait just a second, maybe let's take this seriously, because I'm a psychiatrist, Harvard tenured professor, and I can see psychosis from a mile away. What I'm hearing described is not it's not something that is synonymous with a psychotic belief. Can't fucking talk for some reason. Psychotic beliefs. There's no signs of delirium in the people who are relaying this. So maybe aliens, may not be aliens, but there's something weird going on here. That's in essence what he's saying, John Mack. But to get back to fiction, and its indications, what it indicates about our existence and why the uncanniness of it is so scary to us. We tend to thwart that uneasiness by reassuring ourselves that these are just fabricated ideas. This is fiction that portrays the uncanny, and thus holds no sway over us in our day-to-day, as though the desperate battling to deny their fictitious plight, and for the characters within to desperately do whatever, everything in their power to try and maintain humanity and survival, is utterly irrelevant, as they, the layperson, who's watching, need not fret about supernatural, game-changing threats. even if the characters in the film are more reasonable than people watching it. This means of distraction alleviates our fears, past, present, future crimes by breathing into existence via fiction a mirror into the horrors we have instigated through unyieldingly selfish, diluted, and vicious atrocities towards ourselves and our fellow humans. And this is something that history shows has happened far more than most people care to admit. And we've become all too familiar with doing whatever we can against one another to whatever deadly maiming trespass, since we were first capable of self-awareness as cavemen, thus invalidating this textual purpose of an allegorical horror story, and thus thrusting the viewer into another means of channeling all our doubts and discontent into this reflective realm for the sake of relief from existential fears. So, to put that in brevity for you, basically using horror, which is trying to say something to us, as a means of denying what it's trying to say, and even further, denying things that may not even be part of the supernatural horror. Maybe just be something bothering us, and we want to go, oh, I'm gonna just immerse myself in this fictional world and forget about my own objective issues and the objective messages within these stories. So this approach, deteriorates the significance of our species. That this genre may hold, and it devalues the messages contained within, which is unfortunate, and it creates another convenient method for repressive escapism. We may leap in our seats at just these unpredictable jump scares, yet regardless of how pervasive the message, the closest to activating the pitiful nature of our existence within this on the surface of our own minds, the more the viewer hones in on the worst and most banal aspects of whatever fiction they may be engaging themselves with, entertaining themselves with, be it The Thing, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, any of the Dead trilogy, Romero's Dead trilogy, so that's just to summarize real quick. So the uncanny valley, just uncanniness in general, supernatural fear, it's something that is so deeply distressing because it, in essence, poses questions about how much we have in common with whatever is wreaking havoc on the characters within, the story. And I think that's the most sort of conclusive explanation I've heard for the uncanny valley. So like you see a clown or whatever, creepy clown, it is saying something about you that makes it so scary. Phobias aren't based in nothing. They're not, and I don't believe they're just based in childhood trauma or whatever. And that childhood trauma could have been something, say, fear of clowns could have been something that had arisen in the mind of a child who has not yet adopted, a worldview that is thought to be, just perfect, or not perfect, but close to perfect. They see it and they go, oh, look, they're wearing this mask and they're doing all these unnatural things as a means of entertaining those around us, even though they're not acknowledging to themselves that they're like really fucking creeping everyone out, and you know that everyone hates clowns. Like, they're still waltzing around doing little dances, you know, making balloon animals, doing what clowns are supposed to do. And you know, it speaks about, you know, the roles that they may see in adults, you know, who are doing their daily dance, you know, off to work and back, and playing the role of dad or mom, you know, putting on masks for friends and whatnot, you know, even you know, they say they have a baby and they haven't slept in days and they're just miserable and they're arguing, but friends come over, oh hey, we're happy, let's drink some wine. Like, you know, it's these personifications of just the unpleasant, harsh facets of our lives, and the ways in which, the roles in which we foster to cope with them. And I think that's very interesting. Now, I mean, I want to do another video on determinism and free will. I talked about that a little bit, I think, in the last installment, but just a little bit more on supernatural horror here. So even though the vampire may, actually, I'm gonna talk a little bit about free will before getting into vampires and zombies here. Don't worry, it's all just a page and a half, which is more like 3/4 of a page because my writing is very sloppy and doesn't fit into the lines. So this is, I call it the paradox of choice. I mean, he also calls it the paradox of choice. So to choose to fulfill an aspiration indicates a self-made decision. You know, that's what the consensus is anyways. That is our self that's making this decision. And that for a self to make a decision, you know, that means that there must, regardless of the genetic predispositions, our evolutionary drive, our conditioning, our influences, you know, past, present, you know, just all those things, regardless of that, to make a self-driven decision, well, who's deciding for that self? This causes a kind of layering effect of, okay, well, self's making a decision, there must be a self within that self making another decision, and a self within that self, and a self within that self, a self within that self, and so it just goes on infinitely. And that, you know, just it is a genuinely interesting argument, and I think is something that does actually serve as a paradox towards just how free these decisions are. You know, pure free will suggest that a truly free decision is removed from all, you know, the models that are existing around us, the maps we rely on to guide ourselves, guide our choices, guide our individual beings towards, you know, further ideas of being an individual. You know, these are huge factors in influencing decision. And you know, that is my style of determinism. And the thing about determinism is it is so hotly debated in philosophy because it's you know, the opposite group, the self-deterministic libertarians, who you know, are very similar to like libertarians politically in terms of their ideology. You know, they say that, well, if everything is determined and you're not really making choices with absolute autonomy, then why do you have any need to be a responsible human being? And I think that's just a stupid argument. I think that's like, you know, the Christian apologists who say there'd be no morals if it wasn't for religion. Maybe that was true, like, you know, in the before Christ years, but I mean, we don't need religion now, obviously, in a secular society to have moral behaviors and moral beliefs and so forth. I think it's kind of the same thing. You know, like I bring up time and time again, a simulation theory, even if it's true, I'm still going to be like, hey, I'm here, I'm going to try to make the most of it. You know, so even if my decisions aren't my own, I'm still going to try to be responsible, because, you know, we live in a world where you're punished for making decisions that are, that encroach on the lives of others, that hurt others. So there's that consequence, but, you know, consequence is a result of developmental psychology. But moreover, I think it's just a duty to try and be responsible, or at least entertain the pretense of responsibility for the good of not just ourselves, but for others, regardless of whether we have a choice or not. So, you know, going back to supernatural horror and how this is applicable, you know, even though the vampire may loudly embody the horrors of life, death, and a life wholly aware yet inherently immoral of their actions, a little bit of dyslexia if I can spat that lack of syntax out. So the vampires embody the horrors of life, death, and a life wholly aware yet inherently immoral, as their actions are driven by a need to sustain themselves regardless of the cost and the pain they force onto others. Sound familiar at all? They serve as more entertainment as to distract from an overtly obvious symbol they embody that is a symbol of us at our most parasitic, and us at the mercy of a drive to survive that forces us to hurt others just because we have to sustain ourselves, you know. And you know, despite the zombie representing the fears of decay, aging, plagues, diseases of the flesh, and unhealthy, unnourishing appetites that, are mindlessly driving the very actions that characterize the zombie's existence. Few, if any, encounter these concepts like the parables that good fiction, like the George Romero stuff, good George Romero stuff anyways, should convey, and if of merit, be considered by the audience as opposed to being used as a means of diverting from, actually thinking about this stuff. And even so, on mass, we seem to skirt these concepts with such efficacy that we end up being the ones, that, and this is to quote Ligotti, I love this, the ones to tug on our own puppet strings of fate with rows of teeth fashioned for our own puppet forms that are stained with blood. And with that, there you have it. I hope my stumbly bumbly attempt to read my own handwriting and express these ideas, which are, ideas that, as I said, I've been fascinated with the phenomenon of the uncanny valley for a long time, and I've heard so many people try to explain it, but no one has in a way that I thought truly made sense. I thought, oh, well, maybe this plays a small part, but not in any way like hugely relevant. And also, there are lessons within these explanations about ourselves, and also, it, I think, illustrates, what say zombies, body snatchers, vampires say about us in a way that is more conclusive than just about any other media form that attempts to touch on these issues, like a YouTube video or an essay or whatever. Hopefully I managed to get something from that. So enjoy. Bye.